Hello, Professor Jima. I am Jared Sharp here to talk about my visual presentation. And I decided to write about Octavia Butler, the Afrofuturistic visionary. So let's get right to it. So, Octavia Butler, incredible science fiction author who left a lasting impact for many generations. She was bold enough to cover very taboo topics like politics and religion. More on that on a later slide. And this theme of Black characters doing the things that they were doing was dubbed as Afrofuturism. She is also the only science fiction author ever to win the MacArthur Genius Grant Award, and she won numerous other awards that I have listed on this slide. And she also expanded the genre of science fiction, opened doors specifically for Black writers, but she expanded the genre as a whole as it was different after after her time as a prominent writer in the industry. So, her early years, she struggled a lot with dyslexia. She talks in an interview about how her mother was shocked and surprised that she wanted a library card. When she got that library card, she ended up making the library her second home despite having dyslexia. Even as a child, you could see that she was a person who knew how to grind for what she wanted to do. Also, the image simulates what it's like having dyslexia. And I couldn't imagine, even as an adult, when I'm tired, I feel like the letters start dancing around on the page. And if dyslexia is anything like that, God bless the people who struggle with it and find a way to overcome that circumstance. Now, as a 9-year-old child, she watched a movie that was released in 1954 titled Devil Girl from Mars. This was a B movie release, and when she was watching it, she had the presence of mind to realize that the people who wrote the movie were compensated for it. And she felt that not only could she get paid to write the movie, but she could have done a better job. And so, as opposed to just talking about it, she began to fall in love with writing. And by the age of 13, she began submitting her stories for publication. And interestingly enough, she actually tells a story about how she learned how to submit her stories to publishers from an issue of the Writer magazine that was left on the bus by a complete stranger. So, talk about happenstance, as she was meant to do what it is that she did. Now, along her journey, she experienced a lot of rejection. After going through high school and graduating from Pasadena City College, she began taking classes at UCLA. And it's interesting to hear her mention that going through college did not make her a better science fiction writer, mainly because science fiction was looked at as a childlike genre that people who are adults grow out of. And the genre of science fiction wasn't taken seriously during her time. That led her to begin taking classes with the Writers Guild of America West. And in that guild, she found out that famous writer Harlan Ellison, who was a very accomplished science fiction writer himself, who ended up writing more than 100 novels himself, she found that he was teaching a class and she made it a point to get to his class so that she can learn from him. She mentions that he was teaching screenwriting and that she had no interest in screenwriting, but the value of just being in his presence was important to her, and it ended up paying off because of his cosign. She ended up being able to attend the Clarion Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Workshop, and that began to uh, get put her on a path where she actually sold her first story. The first time she got paid for something that she wrote happened at that workshop. And as you can see, looking at the writings here, I just think it's powerful. I mean, talk about writing the vision and making it plain. I'm a best-selling writer. I write best-selling books. Every one of my books reaches and remains at the top for my own excellent. I will own my home free and clear. I mean, these are just powerful affirmations that came directly from her notebook as these pictures were taken from an exhibit that came from her actual notes. So going back to her journey, after she made her sale at the workshop, she mentions that she did not sell another word for 5 years. And during that time, she worked a lot of odd jobs. She was a dishwasher, she was a factory worker, she was a telemarketer, a potato chip inspector, whatever that is. She did all of these jobs and woke up at 2 a.m. in the morning to write. And so that's just something from the winner's playbook, as I like to study winners. And the more I learn about Octavia Butler, the more I see her as a dominant force in the industry that she was in. I don't see her any different from Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, as it's documented that they were obsessed with being the best and that greatness has no balance. And she embodied that. You can see from her notes that she knew she was gifted to do this, and that it was important to her to get everything that God put in her out into the world. And it's very evident that she accomplished that. Now, during the 5 year gap where she wasn't paid for her writing, she ended up writing a collection of short stories known as the Patronus series. And those books opened a lot of doors for her. And in 1978, she got the opportunity to quit all of the odd jobs and write her book full time. After that, she began to tour, and she credits Black owned bookstores for a lot of her success, and even feminist owned bookstores, as she didn't target feminist bookstores, but once they got wind of her books and her presence, they requested her presence. And so she began touring all over the place to sell her books to bookstores and local communities. And if you look at what she did for Kindred, which she wrote right after this came out in 1979, the work that she put in to create that is very impressive. Not only did she review actual slave archives, she went to Maryland to learn more about the place that she would be writing about, and she wanted to see it for herself. And it's very clear in Kindred as she talks about experiences that Dana has time traveling into slavery. If you read that and you compare that to some of the things that Frederick Douglass said in his autobiography, where he actually was a slave and writes about their account of being a slave, there are a lot of similarities there. And Octavia Butler's book, in my estimation, her account of slavery is very authentic to accounts of people who were slaves like Frederick Douglass. And rounding out this slide, no such thing as overnight success, as a lot of her earlier works became appreciated much later. Kindred being an example of that. It came out in 1979, but her rise to prominence really didn't happen until the 80s and even in the 90s, where she really left her mark on the industry. And she credits marketing when she's asked about it. She says that after she gained a little bit of notoriety, she put the books out with fresh covers and put some marketing resources into it, and the fans ended up really appreciating it. And she was able to be celebrated for all of her work, not just the pieces of work that made her famous. Now, about Kendrick, the first thing that stands out to me about this book is that she is simply an outstanding writer. I've not read too many books where I could visualize the world as well as I do when I read Kendrick. Everything just kind of seamlessly flows together. And this book was so popular, it ended up being adopted into a television show on FX, and which I have a clip of there, and I can't wait to watch it. And I won't touch it until I finish the Kendrick novel, as I don't want the show to ruin anything that I'm reading because I'm enjoying the book just that much. Time travel is a unique aspect. I want to spend a little bit of time on this because you have to be very careful when you write about time travel. It's challenging, and often writers tend to shy away from it because it can present a unique set of challenges because you run into these paradoxes. There's a popular paradox, well, two of them that apply to the Kendrick book. The first one being the grandfather paradox. And this paradox simply says that if a person travels back in time and accidentally kill their grandfather or does anything that would prevent them from being born, then it creates a paradox of if you bring harm to your ancestors or if your ancestors never meet, then how can you exist? Right? And so that's a corner that authors and creatives can write themselves in. And so a lot of time this is explained through parallel universes and things like that. Another paradox that she deals with in this book is called the predestination paradox. Oftentimes, when a person decides that, in a fictional story, obviously, when a person decides that they want to travel back in time to change something or to make something different, whether it be improve something in the past or change your current set of circumstances, the predestination concept says that regardless of what you do, if you try to change the past, then what you actually do is inadvertently make the past happen. Basically, it's a concept that regardless of what you do, time has a certain flow to it that cannot be disrupted. So if you try to go back and change something, you're actually the reason that it happened, which it appears that that's what's happening with Dana. And Dana, as a character, even mentions this herself when talking about her interactions with people that she has identified as her ancestors. And she literally says in the book that she will not dare test the paradox of time travel. And so it takes a supreme. And I explain all that to say that not only did Octavia Butler have the presence of mind to be educated about the rules of time travel, but she actually had her characters acknowledge it. That's kind of like, I see that as breaking the fourth wall when it comes to writing skill. And so she handled that masterfully. As a matter of fact, the one of the Avengers movies actually spent 15, 20 minutes explaining the concept and the rules of time travel in their universe. Because even in a fictional story, you can't have time travel paradox that lead to conclusions that don't make sense. So shout out to you, Octavia Butler.